Hello everyone. In this lesson, or let me say in this series, we'll be learning about factorization. So this series will be divided into 4 different parts. Part 1, we'll be learning about how to factorize if we have common factors. Part 2, we'll be learning about how to factorize difference of 2 squares. And in part 3, we'll be learning about how to factorize trinomials with the second power. And in the last part, we'll be learning about how to factorize trinomials with the third power. The first part, this is the basic introduction on factorization. So we'll be learning about the common factors. So how can we pull out common factors? This part will help you to understand factorization, and then if you understand this part properly, the rest of the part will become very easy. So let's begin. So before we start with this topic, let's understand what I mean by common factors. As you can see the word common, right? So we have person A and person B. So person A likes red and blue color, and person B likes black, red and green color. So what is the common thing between them? So what are those two common or one common or any common colors between these two people? So as you can see, red is the common color between these two, right? So we can say our common factor between these two is red. Why? Because we can see the red appears in person A and the red appears in person B as well. So A also likes red and B also likes red. So it means the common term between these two are red. Therefore we can say our common factor in this term is a red color. So you can see what I mean by common factor, right? So let's begin with an example and see. So the first example says AB plus B. We can see these two are divided. Why? Because we know the terms are divided by plus and the minus sign. So we can see we got a plus sign. So it means AB, as we speak before, AB is person A and B is person B. So therefore we can see what are the common terms in these two. So what is the common term between the first one and the second one? As you can see, B is common because B appears in the first one also and B appears in the second one also. So we write B. And once you have identified your common factor, you open a bracket and then you see if you have taken out B from the first one, what do you remain with? You only remain with A. Therefore you write A, and then what is the sign following after this? That's plus. So now you can see B was pulled out, we remained with A plus. Now here we only have B, but we have already pulled out B. So what do you times B with in order to get B? So you times anything with 1, you always get itself, right? So B times 1 will give you B. Therefore you write a 1 here. So you get your answer as B as your common factor, then into the bracket A plus 1. So let's do more examples so you can see how this works. So the example 2 says 2x minus 6xy. Just by looking at it, we can already see that x is our common factor, right? But that's not the only common factor we have here. The other common factor we have is 2. How do we know that? Okay, so let's see. We know that 2 can go into 2 once, right? Because 2 times 1 is 2. But if you look at 6, 2 can also go into 6. How many times can it go? 3 times, because 2 times 3 is 6. So we can pull out 2 things. We can pull out 2 as well as x, right? So let's say we got 2x. Then we open the bracket. Now we got 2x here and we need a 2x here. So what do we need to do? If we have this whole number here, we just multiply it by 1, because anything times 1 is itself. Then the sign which is minus. Now we can see how many times does 2 go into 6? 3 times, right? So we got 3 and we already have x, so we don't have to worry about x. Then what do we remain with? Y. Therefore our answer is 2x into the bracket 1 minus 3y. Let's look at example 3. Example 3 says 8ab plus 24b. Just by mere looking at it, we can already see that one of our factor is b, because it appears in both the first term and the second term. Therefore our first factor is b, right? Now what is the other factor that we have? As we can see, 8 is also our other factor. Why? Because 8 can go into 8 how many times? 1 time, right? And how many times can 8 go into 25? That's 3 times. So therefore our other factor is 8. So our two factors are 8 and b. So let's write our factors. You write 8, b, and then you open a bracket. If you have 8b here, what are you remaining with? A only, right? So you write a, then the sign which is plus. So now you got 8 here. How many times does 8 go into 24? 3 times, right? 8 times 3 is 24. So we got 3. And then we already have a b here, so we don't need to write again. And now we just close the bracket. Therefore, our answer is 8b into the bracket a plus 3. Let's do another example. Now, example 4 says t plus t squared. Before we move on with this example, as we know, what does t squared stand for? So from our exponent rules, if we expand this, we know that t squared is same as t times t, correct? Because we got to the power of 1 and to the power of 1. And what does multiplication rule says? If you have two same terms and if you are multiplying, just add the exponents. So we know t squared stands for t times t, correct? Let's move on with this example now. So we can see, by just mere looking at it, obviously t is our common factor, t, right? So t, we pull it out. Since we have t here, what do? We need a t, so it means we multiply it by 1. So you multiply 1 because t times 1 will give us t. Then what is the sign? Plus. So as we already said in the starting of this example, that t squared stands for t times t, means there are two t's, right? So we have a 1t here, right? Its power is 1, but here we need to the power of 2. So it means how many t's are missing? One more, right? So therefore we write another t. So the answer for this one is t into the bracket 1 plus t. Let's move on to the next example. Example 5 says 2x squared minus 2x. Easy, right? 2x and 2x is our common factor, correct? Yeah, that's right. Let's pull them out. So we got 2x and we open the bracket. As you can see in our first term, we got 2x squared. But we pulled out our term as, our common factor as 2x. So what are we missing? Okay, 2 is fine. But x, we have to the power 1. But here we have to the power 2. So it means there is one more x missing. So we write x. What is the sign? Minus. So we got 2x is our common factor. So we have 2x here. So what do we multiply 2x with to get 2x? 1, right? So the answer is 1. Therefore, our answer is 2x into the bracket x minus 1. Let's move on to the next example. Before we solve example 6, I want you guys to pause the video and try doing it yourself. So see which are your common factors. Try to pull them out and get to your final answer. Then later on come back to the video and see if you got the same answer as me. Okay, so example 6 says 3t squared minus 36t. We can already see that t is our common factor, right? But now do we have another factor? Since they give us numbers, maybe it's possible that one of them is our common factor. So let's see, right? So let's look at the small number. 3 can go into itself one time, right? But now, can 3 go into 36? If you know your tables properly, yes, 3 can go into 36 12 times, right? Because 12 times 3 is 36. Therefore, our common factors are 3 and t. So let's pull them out. So we got 3t into the bracket. So if you go to the first term, we got 3t, but here we got 3t squared. What is missing? Only t, because we got 1t here and here we need 2 t's. So therefore, we are writing a t minus, how many times does 3 go into 36? 12 times, correct? 12, and then we already have the t, so we don't need to write that. Therefore, our final answer is 3t into the bracket t minus 12. I hope you guys also got the same answer. Let's move on to example 7. Example 7 says 7x squared plus 8x. So we can see first that x is our common factor, right? X appears here, x appears here. But are any of this number our common factor? 7 can go into 7 once, right? But 7 cannot go into 8. 8 can go into 8 once, but 8 cannot go into 7. And there are no numbers that can go into both 7 or 8. Therefore, we do not have any common factors for the numbers. The only common factor we got is x, right? So let's pull x out. We pull the x out. So now what do we remain with here? Obviously the number, right? Because there is no number here. So 7. Now how many x here? We got 1, x to the power of 1. But we need x to the power of 2. So it means we are missing one more x. So we write the x and the sign, which is plus. Now what are we missing here? Obviously no number, so we first put the number 8. And x, right? X is already there, so we do not need to put the x. Therefore we just close the bracket. So our final answer is x into the bracket 7x plus 8. Now example 8 says 14a b cubed minus 7a cubed b. Right? We can see now we got three things, a number and two alphabets. Just looking at the alphabet, we already know that our two common factors are a and b, right? A appears here, b appears here, a appears here, b appears here. Now the deal is how many a's are we pulling out and how many b's are we pulling out. So we know the smallest a between the two we got is 1a. So therefore 1a, and the smallest b between the two we got is 1b, right? So it means we'll be pulling out 1b. But now we got numbers also. So we need to see if we have a common factor in terms of a number. So if you look at 14 and 7, 7 is the smallest, right? So we always begin with the smaller number. Can 7 go into 7? Obviously 1 times. Now can 7 go into 14? Yes, 2 times, right? Therefore our other common factor is 7, right? So our common factors are 7, a because that's the smallest a we got, and b because the smallest b is 1b. Therefore factors are 7a, b. Now we open the bracket. Now we see our number is 7. How many times can 7 go into 14? 2 times, right? So we write 2. A, we already got the a, right? And now coming to b, we got b, but here we got b cubed, or b to the power of 3. But here we got b to the power of 1. How many b's are we missing? 2, right? So therefore we are missing b to the power of 2. Minus, as the sign, 7 is already there, we do not need to write it again. A, but here we got a to the power of 1, and here we got a to the power of 3. How many a's are we missing? A to the power of 2, right? Because we are missing 2 a's. Therefore, here we'll write a to the power of 2. Now if we go to b, how many b's do we have here? 1. Now how many b's do we have here? 1. So we do not need to worry about that. Therefore, now we just close the bracket. So our final answer is 7ab into the bracket 2b squared minus a squared. So did you see how important it is for us to find out which one is our common factor and which is not? So when you are given different alphabets, numbers, or whatsoever they can mix for you, right? If you have numbers, always ask yourself first, okay, I can see a number, does it mean there is a common factor? So go to the smallest number first and see if that number can go into the big number. Obviously the big number cannot go into the small number, right? If both cannot go into each other, then see, is there a common factor between the two? If not, then don't write it. Then you move on to the next term and then next term, like that, like how we did here. We went on to the a. Here we had a to the power of 1 and a to the power of 3. Both has a. So which a do we choose? You always choose the one with the smaller power. The smaller power was a to the power of 1. That's why we wrote a. And then we went to the b. Which one was the smallest b? Was b to the power of 1. Therefore we chose our common factor as b. So did you see how we choose our common factors? Let's do a few more examples. You can get used to this. Let's move on to example 9. In example 9, we got 3 terms. Until now, we only had 2 terms. Now, we got 3 terms. So example 9 says 2p minus 4q plus 2r. Just by looking at it, we know none of the alphabets are a common factor, right? Because we got a p, q, r. So none of them are common. But then in terms of a number, if you see, we got 2 2's, right? And 1 4. So we know 2 can go into 2, not a problem. But can 2 go into 4? Yes, 2 times. So it means our common factor here is 2. Therefore we pull out 2, but no other alphabet. So just open the bracket. We already have the 2, so the only thing we have to put is p. Then the sign, which is negative. We have a number. How many times does this number? 2 goes into 4. 2 times, right? So we write 2. And then we do not have any alphabet, so we're still missing q also. So therefore q plus, how many times does 2 go into 2? We already have 2 here, we don't have to worry about it. because it goes one time. And what are we missing? R. Therefore we write R. So answer is 2 into the bracket P minus 2Q plus R. So did you see? We had 2P minus 4Q plus 2R. First we went and see, do we have any common alphabets? Our answer was no. So therefore there is no common factor as in terms of alphabet. But now in terms of numbers, we got a 2 here and we got a 2 here. So we know we don't have to worry about this 2 because 2 can go into 2 and this 2 can go into 2. But there the problem is 4. Now can the 2 go into 4? Yes, 2 times, right? Because 2 times 2 is 4. That's why we pulled our common factor as 2. So now we went to the first term. We said we already had the 2. We don't have to worry. What was remaining was P, right? So we put P as it is minus. We went to the second term. We said we had 2, but we have 4 here. So how many times does 2 go into 4? 2 times. That's why we wrote a 2. And there is a Q missing. So therefore we put a Q. And the sign was plus. And in the final term, we had 2R. We know that we already have the 2. And what was missing was R. That's why we put the R. So this was example 9. Let's move on to example 10. So in example 10, what are our common factors? Just by looking at it, we know x, y are definitely our common factors, right? But the problem will be, which x to the power are we pulling out as our common factor, right? So let's first deal with the numbers, right? We got 24, 16 and 36. As you can see, 3 of them are different numbers and none of them can go into each other. So we need to look for our greatest common factor. Or in other words, we need to look for a factor which is the highest that can go into 3 of them. So what I mean by that, so let's say first, we have 2 as our factor because 2 can go into 24 12 times, 2 can go into 16 8 times, and 2 can go into 36 18 times. But that is not our common factor. Why? Because it's not the greatest common factor. Or in other terms, it's not a GCF. Therefore, we need to look for a number that can go into 3 of them and is the highest. So that number is 4. Because 4 can go into 24 6 times, 4 can go into 16 4 times, and 4 can go into 36 8 times. Therefore, 4 is our greatest common factor. There is no number after 4 that can divide 3 of them together, right? So therefore 4 is our greatest common factor. Now coming to x, we need to look for the smallest x to the power in order to pull that out. So if you look at here, we got a 4, we got a 3, but here we got a 2. Therefore we can pull out x to the power of 2 as our common factor, x to the power of 2. And now when moving on to y, we have to do the same. We need to pull out the smallest to the power, right? So the smallest power is 3 here, 4 here and 3 here. So we can pull out y to the power of 3. So that is our common factor. Now we have got our common factor. Let's write the remaining answer. So how many times does 4 go into 24? 6 times, right? Therefore we got a 6 here. Now how many x do we have here? To the power of 2. But here we got x to the power of 4. So it means what's remaining? 2 more x are remaining, right? So we need x to the power of 2. Now if we look at y, here we got y to the power of 3. And here we got y to the power of 3. Therefore we do not need to write that because we already have it. So what's the sign? Negative. Now moving on to the next number. How many times does 4 go into 16? 4 times, right? Therefore we write 4. And the next term is x. So x to the power of 2. But here we got x to the power of 3. How many x are you missing? 1. Therefore we just write x. And coming to y, here we got y to the power of 3. Here we got y to the power of 4. The remaining got 1y. Therefore we just write y. And the sign, which is plus. And the last one, how many times does 4 go into 36? That's 8 times, right? So we got 8. And the power of x is here 2 and here is 2. Therefore we do not need to write the x. And moving on to y, the power of y is 3, the power of y is 3. Therefore we do not need to write x to the power of 2 and y to the power of 3. We just remain with that. And that is your final answer. Let's move on to the next example. Example 12 says 15a cubed b plus 45ab. I want you guys to pause this video, go do it yourself, and then later on come back to the video to see the solution. So looking at the numbers, what is our GCF? So what is our greatest common factor? What is the number that can go into 15 as well as 45? So the best trick is, when you have different numbers, always try for the smallest number first. The smallest number is 15, the 15 can go into 15. Yes, but can 15 go into 45? I hope you guys know the tables. Yes, 15 can go into 45 3 times, right? So therefore 15 is our GCF. So we pull out 15. Now moving on to a to the power of 3 and a. As I told you guys, we need to look for the one with the smallest power. The smallest power is 1, which is a itself. So we pull out a. And then moving on to b, both has 1 power, so we pull out b, right? And open the bracket. As we move on to the first one, we can see 15, we already have it, we don't need to worry about it. When we move on to a, we got to the power of 3, but here we got to the power of 1. How many a's are we missing? 2, correct. So we write a to the power of 2. And moving on to b, we already have to the power of 1 to the power of 1, we do not need to write it again. And then the sign, which is plus. Now how many times does 15 go into 45? 3 times, right? So 3, a to the power of 1, a to the power of 1, we don't need to write. B to the power of 1, b to the power of 1, we don't need to write. You just close the bracket. Therefore, the answer for number 12 is 15ab into the bracket, a squared plus 3. Now we'll move on to the last example. Now finally, question 13. Question 13 says minus 12 n to the power of 3 m plus 6 nm minus nm squared. As you can see, our first term is negative, so we will pull out the negative. In question 13, we will use lot of multiplication of integers rules. So if you haven't watched the part 2 of multiplication of integers in the integer series, please go and watch that, because it will be very useful to apply in this time. Okay? So we're going to pull out negative as our factor. Now we move on to the numbers. Here we got 12, here we got 6, here we got 1. Right? 6 and 12 can go into each other, right? 6 can go into 12, 6 can go into 12. But here there is a 1, invisible 1, like I told you guys. If there is no number, there is always a invisible 1. So there is a 1. So the greatest common factor here can be 1, because 1 can go into 6 and 1 can go into 12. If 1 is the greatest common factor, we already know that we do not need to pull anything out. So numbers, we are fine. Now moving on to the n. What did I say? We look for the smallest power. The smallest power on the n is this 3, 1 and 1. So the smallest power is 1. Therefore we're pulling out n. Then moving on to m, the smallest power is 1. So therefore we pull out m itself. Now as we move on here, here we got a negative sign and here we got a negative sign. So we do not need to write the negative sign, right? Therefore we just write nothing in terms of that. Then moving on to number, there is no number. So we write 12. Then moving on to n, we got the power of 1 and here we got the power of 3. How many n are we missing? 2, right? So we write n to the power of 2. And moving on to m, we already have m has power 1, m has power 1, so we don't need to write that. Now moving on to this. Here we got a positive sign, but we already pulled out the negative signs. If you have watched the multiplication of integers video, you would have known that what gives you positive when you multiply minus. So minus times minus gives you positive. So therefore you're going to put a minus here, because minus times minus will give you a positive. Now moving on to the number, there is no number, so you write 6 as it is. And n has the power of 1, n has the power of 1, so no need to write that. M has the power of 1 and m has the power of 1. We do not need to write that as well. So that's the only thing in the second term. Now here we got a negative sign, but we already pulled out the negative times. So if you have a negative sign here, what do you multiply the negative sign with to get a positive sign? If you remember, negative times positive is negative. Therefore you're going to have a positive here. Now moving on, we got a n to the power of 1, n to the power of 1. So it means we don't need to write that. But moving on to m, we got m to the power of 1 and m to the power of 2. we are missing 1m. So we need to write that. Therefore, the answer for number 13 is minus nm into the bracket 12n squared minus 6 plus m. Did you see how your previous knowledge on mathematics helps you? So if you haven't watched the video on multiplication of integers, please go and watch so that you can understand this example. This is your homework for the common factors. Please make sure you do your homework. I cannot emphasize more, as I've been telling you in each and every video. You can watch my video, but the only time you can understand and make it to go in your head is by practicing, because maths can only be learned by practicing. So even if you're watching my videos, make sure that you're not only watching my video. While you're watching the video, take down the notes. The example I do, copy them down, and then later on, copy those examples, only the questions, and then try doing it on your own and see if you can understand. And after doing that, come back to the homework and try doing it. And come to the next video and see how I solve this homework. So guys, please do your homework so that you can understand common factors. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Thank you very much for watching the video. Subscribe to my channel, like and share with your friends. Until next time, stay safe and study.